Yeah. From Hypebeast Radio, I'm Jeff Staple, and this is The Business of Hype, a show about creative entrepreneurs, brand builders, innovators, and the realities behind the dreams they've built. Hey everyone, this is Jeff Staple. So for this week, I'm excited to bring you kind of a special bonus episode. So Adidas has been working on this really cool initiative called MakerLab. Essentially what they've done is they have worked with 3 footwear designers from around the planet, Helen Kirkum, Nash, and Shun Hirose, and allowed them to work in both the Adidas headquarters in Germany as well as their factories in and around Vietnam. They were tasked to design, rapid prototype, and create completely new Campus 80 sneakers that would then be brought to market. We're talking about taking a process here that normally takes years and condensing it down into weeks. It's pretty crazy. And on top of that, the way they're releasing them is also crazy. So these shoes have no MSRP on them like all other shoes in the market. These are released via an IPO on StockX. So through a blind auction, people get to determine what they want to pay for the shoe, and the public ultimately determines what will be the going rate for them. So as you can see, there are many, many firsts across the board here. So I have worked with Adidas now to allow us to do a special live taping of the Business of Hype inside their super secret Brooklyn creator farm. The 3 creators were flown in to speak in front of an audience of design students from around the city. So what you're about to hear is pretty special and awesome. And make sure you stick around until the very end for when I get to recap post-mortem with key Adidas heads on how they thought this entire crazy project went down. All right, let's get into this week's special episode live from the Brooklyn Creator Farm, the making of Adidas MakerLab. What's up, everyone? My name is Jeff Staple. I'm the founder and creative director of a company called Staple Design. I also have a podcast called The Business of Hype that's on Hypebeast. The premise of the podcast is really to talk about creative entrepreneurs and how they go about doing their business in this day and age of like ever-changing, shifting culture. It's a pretty good show. We've got some great guests on it. It's in my 7th season. And what you're sitting in right now is a very special live taping of The Business of Hype. So you guys, whether you like it or not, are on an episode of The Business of Hype right now, right? At the end of this whole thing, we're going to be doing audience Q&A. So this is your chance to also have a voice on the podcast too, which should be pretty cool. What you're sitting in right now happens to be what's known as the Adidas Brooklyn Creator Farm, which in the footwear world is like the Wizard of Oz, like Mecca secret lab of where really cool futuristic stuff comes out of the 3 Stripes land. And you know, having the opportunity for you guys to even see this place, you should consider yourselves really lucky. I feel really lucky that we could even do a podcast out of here. So it's really such a dope opportunity that we're here. And the reason why that we're here is because we wanted to tell you guys about this new thing that Adidas has been working on called MakerLab. And in all honesty, it actually isn't that new. It's actually been around since, I think, 2016, and it's existed in many different forms. One of the forms that it's existed in is within Adidas headquarters. So if you ever have the opportunity to go to the global headquarters in Herzogenaurach, Germany or Portland, they have Maker Labs within their facilities that are for the internal staff to be able to just really create and free-form ideate on stuff, really get out of like 2D thinking of like pen and pad and actually go in there and get their hands dirty or maybe even get their hands bloody if they're lucky, and really be able to make stuff. Then what Adidas did was they started taking the MakerLab concept to market to public facing. So if you were lucky enough to be at Paris Fashion Week or at Hype Fest, there are certain festivals and sort of large events where they put a mobilized version of MakerLab and allowed people to really experience it firsthand. And now the latest iteration of MakerLab is what we're about to launch tonight right here. And part of that involves 3 makers that Adidas has selected from all around the world. Those 3 makers are in the building. They have spent the last few months ideating, designing, and making shoes with Adidas in what is the fastest, most unprecedented methodology of making shoes ever. All the way from the design process, to the sampling process, to the manufacturing process, even to the selling process. All of it is very, very first-hand, first ever stuff that's happening. And we wanted to share it with you guys. We also have some select Adidas staff that were integral in making this process a reality, and they're gonna be here as well. And then we'll open it up to you guys for questions. So let's get started. Let's bring out the 3 makers of the Adidas MakerLab. Have a seat. We could just campfire, sit around it.
What do you want?
You could sit here.
Sorry.
You can sit here. Yeah, sit, come closer. And then, yeah.
Is this good?
Yeah.
Great.
All right. Welcome,
Hello.
everyone.
Thank you.
Welcome to the Business Vibe. Welcome to Brooklyn Creator Farm. Let's start with introductions of who you are and what you do, going from my left.
So I'm Helen Kirkum. I'm a footwear designer and artist based in London. I have a studio there in Hackney, East London, where I basically take apart shoes and put them back together again. I work mostly with recycled footwear and kind of do this deconstructed, reconstructed sneaker thing.
Okay.
I'm Alex Nash. Again, like Helen, I destroy and rebuild shoes. I started doing it many years ago and kind of, I guess, developed the skill. Just a general creator of things, not just footwear, but whatever comes into my mind, basically.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. Last but not least.
My English is not good.
That's his name. My English is
Japanese.
Yes, so Shun is from Japan, and his English is not good, as he stated. I didn't say that. But he has a translator here with us.
はい。日本の渋谷で20歳の時から13年間コブラをやっていて、スニーカーをカスタムしだしてはまだ4年ぐらいしか経っていないけど、まあなんとかラッキーでここにいますって。
My name, well, his name is Shun Hirose. He is from Shibuya, Tokyo, and he started off as a cobbler when he was 20 years old, and he's been in the business for 13 years. He started sneaker customization just 3-4 years ago.
All right, so I think in order to give some context to what we're here talking about, let's just cut to the chase and let's unbox. We have fresh pairs of the shoes here. Each grab your box. And let's do a proper unboxing so that everyone in the audience can also see what you guys have been working on. So first, let's do this unveiling. I mean, don't look at their feet. Just look at what's in the box. All right, yeah, you could. Sorry, everyone just start taking out their shoes and.
Do I just have to speak about it, or just take it out?
You will later, for
right,
sure.
okay.
Yeah. But just hold it for now. Yeah, so that everyone. This is the first time most of these people are probably seeing the shoes. Yeah. Yeah, it's beautiful. So as you can see, it's 3 very different shoes, very different executions, but they're all based on the campus of which I'm wearing the OG edition of right now. So you can see when they talk about destroying and reconstructing shoes, they definitely did that in their own unique way. I think I want to start at the beginning. Like, how did you guys get the call from Adidas to be like, yo, join us in MakerLab? I think each of you have your own entry point. So do you want to start that off?
So for me, I just got the call from Jose, and he came down to my studio to explain the project to me. But I have an interesting story because I actually used to work at Adidas Originals for 1 year in the design team. And then I left to start up my own studio, and now I am back, but doing this project. So I've had a really nice kind of journey through always being affiliated with Adidas and working with Adidas products.
Did you, out of curiosity, did you know Jose when you worked at Adidas?
No, I
Isn't that
don't think
interesting?
you joined then. You were new,
Oh, okay.
yeah.
I think that's a
missed
really,
each other,
it's a really interesting point that like, you never know.
Yeah,
You know what I
exactly.
mean? Like, yeah, just because like someone didn't know you, you never know when you're gonna get the call later for something important like this.
Yeah, 100%. That's why you always have to be nice to people.
Words of advice, for sure. Nash, what about you?
I guess really it started 13 years ago.
That's it?
Yeah, 13 years ago. I met Jose.
I thought you were an overnight success.
Yeah. Well, it feels like it, like the resurgence. But it started 13 years ago. I met Jose when I was working at Maharishi. And it was at the start of my customization career. And he really liked what I was doing. And we sat down, we had lunch. And he took me through his book, his journal, which really inspired me to do my journal and pencil drawings and stuff like that. And then he disappeared. I didn't see him for like
10 years.
like more, yeah, like 12 years. And then I get this call out of nowhere last summer. Can you do a MakerLab? I'm in Sicily with my family having holiday. Can you do a MakerLab? I'm like, yeah.
Right.
Yeah. When
Long
is it?
time.
In 3 days. Okay. And then since then I've done we did like 2 MakerLabs together. Basically I kind of fell out of the industry and Jose kind of,
Brought you back.
He brought me back and really like that first MakerLab was like a 1-day event and the next day I was just like, oh, what am I just wanted to, I wanted to make something. I was like, I got the bug back hard. And then I think I hit him up like 2 months later. I was like, mate, I need something to do. Do you know what I mean? He's like, I've got something for you. And then we did another event in Paris.
Yeah.
And with each event, it kind of like, where I saw you there. Yeah. So the first event, I was just like there to kind of help facilitate people like yourself or consumers and media to show them the process from from inspiration to design to the manufacturing in the basic form. And then with Paris was another customization where I was taking more of a supervisor role because we had like very highbrow fashion ateliers,
right?
And I had to bridge the gap from their skill set to the customizer to the sneaker world.
Yeah.
So showing them how to apply their skills to the sneakers and showing the customers how to utilize the ateliers. So bridging that gap, and that was a week event.
Yep.
And then this project, again I was on holiday, interrupting my holiday again.
Either you're always on holiday or his timing's impeccable.
I think my friends will tell you I'm always on holiday, but that's not true. Just my Instagram gets more interesting when I'm on holiday, so it seems like it. So then, really, it was really unexpected. When I initially started customizing, it wasn't held in high regard.
The art of customization.
The art of customization and my destroy and rebuild and juxtaposition between hybriding and soul swapping and so on wasn't held in high regard. And I was doing stuff that brands were not allowed to do themselves. They had to follow regimental guidelines. They're not allowed to switch this upside down, mix shoes. So, and in a way that kind of discouraged me from the industry, and that's why I fell out. And then, so for Jose to kind of come out and bring me back in, and at a time when brands are doing that, the evolution of what I was doing is carried on until now, and they embrace that, and they embrace creation was like a big nod to me and affirmation of what I've done
for decades.
For decades, for the industry. I'm not saying that what they're doing now is amazing. It really is cool.
I mean, for those who don't know, if you're listening to this and like you don't know who Alex Nash is, you should really do your Google homework because he's one of the pioneer architects of customization. For 20 years ago, easily, right?
2003, I reckon.
Yeah. Yep, one of the first guys. So that's what you mean when you said you came away and then like Jose had to like pull you back in.
Yeah. By the scruff of the ear. But if you're searching Nash Money
Nash
was my
Money.
name back then.
Yes,
I don't
yes.
really use it now. I'm a bit more grown up. I'm not American. So.
All right, Shun, what about you?
はい、僕は、もともとインスタグラムで靴をカスタムしていて販売を結構していた、まあ、いろんな大きいブランドアイダスの服で、まあ、2つのブランドから大きなブランドからちょっともうこれ以上やったら訴えるよぐらいのことを言われてけどまた、まあ、さっきの話だけどアイダスだからメールが来てで題名見たらまた訴えられるんだって思ったけど、まあ、ミーティングしたいそれが来たのが6月の19日で10日後から2週間いてくれって言われたとりあえず
So Shun, he does it still, customize all sorts of sneakers for major brands, and he uploads the finished product to his Instagram, and because he does that, he gets frequently gets letters from big brands, competitors of Adidas, claiming to sue him, cease and desist letter.
Right.
So when he first got the email from Adidas, he saw the Adidas logo. He thought it was another threat, another lawsuit threat, and he was quite nervous. But the email said it was from Adidas Tokyo. They wanted to meet him to talk about this project. He hadn't heard of the project before, and he went over to the office and they had a nice chat.
Was he scared when he went to the office that they were going to try to kill him, actually?
オフィス行った時どんな気持ちでしたか？
まだ用心してて怖いなと
He was still a bit apprehensive.
Right,
そ
right.
したらまさかのこんな話で、すごい
It was almost like it's too hard. It was too hard to believe that it was. They asked him to join this project.
Yeah. So I think one of the firsts of this project that I mentioned earlier was the speed of which this project took place. Helen, if you could sort of take us back on a chronological timeline of from the moment you got briefed on the design project till, talk us through the number of days or weeks that occurred throughout.
Yeah, so it was very, very short, even to the fact when we first got contacted from the project, it kind of was happening within the next couple of weeks after we got contacted. So remember when Jose came to the studio and he's like, oh yeah, I'm in London, I'm going to come to the studio. So me and my partner are frantically trying to clean up the studio and sweep, and Jose's walking up the stairs and we're still sweeping the carpet. So that was already a rush. And then from that point to when we got to Germany, it was maybe 2 weeks from when we first got the intro. And then, it was basically we were in Germany for 1 week, then we were in Vietnam for 1 week, and that was it to create the entire project. So, we really got thrown in at the deep end, and a lot of us didn't know each other. We knew each other's work, but we didn't know each other personally. We didn't know the wider Adidas team, production team, film team, so everything was new. So we really got thrown in quite quickly into the whole thing. And then
and just to give you guys a context, for a project of this magnitude, of this scale, when you're dealing with $1 billion organization, usually just the contract negotiation before you even get started could be 3 months of just lawyering. So the fact that in a matter of weeks you were already working and flying to Vietnam to check samples is already showing how crazy this project is.
Yeah, exactly. And everything we made in the MakerLab was turned around that same day. So we had to submit things by 3 p.m. and then the developers would work on the shell patterns, get it out to the factory so that the factory could make us a sample ready for us to see when we got there. So everything was super accelerated, much more than normal.
Nash, to my understanding, one of the first things that you were sort of provided access to was the archive at Herzo, right?
Yeah.
Talk us through what that was like, being able to see pretty much the entire DNA of Adidas. In the
I'm
room.
still buzzing from that experience. So I wake up every morning and my brain is ticking.
You still got the white gloves?
They're in my bag.
They give you these white gloves. You can't touch shoes without the gloves. It's amazing.
And
so that was really to kickstart the inspiration, right?
I tell you, so basically, what Helen's referred to about the contract was a great thing, get it out of the way.
Right.
And
Get
also
working.
made a bond with, kind of lay out the relationship ahead, because it was like everything was on the table. Any issues we had with the contract, we sat down and spoke about it, and it was just done like that. So,
Unheard of.
Unheard of. But as soon as you get that out of the way, it's all about, this project has all been about creativity.
Yeah.
So it's just focus on creativity.
Right.
And trust as well. Like that affirms a trust,
Yeah.
like give and take. And then from being told the project, a very brief from it, like before, from before, we got there, was like, right, one shoe, you're going to design one shoe based on the campus. It's going to be made in 333 pairs, and there's XXX, right? So I was quite busy prior, sorting some stuff out. So the first thing I did was doing lots of line drawings of the campus. So I knew the design of the campus for every stitch.
Yeah.
Just understand it intimately.
Deconstruct the campus.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But just draw it. And then when we got there, we had an intense briefing, which was like, for every design you submit and hand it in by 2 or 3 o'clock, we will sample it. I'm like, are you nuts? Do you know what I mean?
Every design?
I know.
Because you thought there was going to be one submission and that was it.
Yeah, and you just work on the design on that one design. So going, leading up to the actual project, I was thinking about just my one design. And in my mind, it's quite easy. In the theme that I designed, my customization style and juxtaposition, it's quite natural.
Yeah.
Now you're telling me I can do as many shoes. I've got like 15 years of pent-up aggression of not being able to work with brands, just going and then you put me in a room in the archive for inspiration, and you go through
it's almost not fair.
I swear, oh my gosh, it was just, it's like the broad history of Adidas, then more in depth into the 80s with footwear and apparel and culture, and street culture, and what it was the fashion in the 80s, then into 80s footwear, then into the 80s, the Campus 80, and it was just like, oh, my brain can't cope with this. This is like, and then straight immediately after that, it's like, go to the MakerLab, and there's 10 different shoes.
Yeah.
Immediately there that I'm like, right, this is my mood board, and it was just in, yeah. The archive, I can't, I'm gonna drop this mic.
Does Shun want to add something to his initial experience?
The brand no full story.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, so we've been through 2 interviews and all of that.
Yes,
so
okay.
He can leave it to me. So after he received the email from Adidas, he had just 10 days to fly out, and he had so many orders from his existing clients to deliver. He had to finish all the shoes up, so it was really hectic.
Yeah.
In those 10 days, and he also didn't have a passport. He had an outdated expired one. He had to do all of those things, and he went out to Harajuku to buy the 4 colorways of Campus. They were available in 4 colors in Japan: navy, red, gray, and black. So he bought all 4 of them to test them out at his workshop with his own machinery. And so Shun is a sole specialist.
Outsole
specialist. So he customizes sneakers by fitting them with boot soles. So he wanted to try that out, test that out in his workshop. So he did that. He brought 2 samples with the boot soles over to Germany, and he knew that Adidas didn't have this customized style before, like the boot sole sneakers. So he wanted to do that. But when he was in Germany, they told him he couldn't do that. So he was at loss.
Right. He kind of wasted his time by making that a little bit. Yeah. Damn.
Oh, no, they're pretty sick shoes. I wouldn't say a waste of time.
They exist.
But they still, まだそのサンプル持ってますよね。東京で？ブーツの。He still has them in Tokyo.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice.
But later, Adidas told him that he could muck around with the boots. I mean the soles. But he's like, oh, that's. But I'll just do the upper panels. So.
Right.
It all went well.
Yes, it did. Nash, I understand that there was a deadline for the submission. and you were out of the 3 designers, you were the one that went to Vietnam with sort of like the least preparedness. Talk about this a little bit.
So it kind of stems back to like my plethora of mood boards and ideas. So because I felt comfortable with the Nash one, I kind of left that aside because I felt like I could get through that pretty quick. But I started focusing on all these different designs and concepts. And then very fast the week went through and I was like, oh, right. You can't really submit like 5 shoes a day. It's not happening, I'm not superhuman. And then by the time it got to the point of submitting the one that maybe I should have gone with from the first place, which is inspired by me and the themes on me with a kind of collaboration with Adidas archive, I basically got to Vietnam Monday morning just submitting that design. So I was already 3 days. So in effect, I made the shoe in a week.
Yeah.
All right.
Wow.
And I mean, I had 2 other samples there. One was really strong.
Yeah.
Really like, it was like my backup plan. It was the safer option, but really like, really nice. I loved that shoe.
Yeah.
But it wasn't, I didn't feel like it kind of was a true expression of the collaboration between Alex Nash and Adidas.
Like it wasn't pushing it hard enough.
No, I mean, it's a standalone shoe in a shop.
Yeah.
It would do well in a shop.
Right.
But it wasn't like
a collaboration.
Yeah. And then the other one was the Baker shoe, and I couldn't do that one because I wasn't allowed. So I kind of had to bite the bullet and just go with an idea that I hadn't, and just kind of closed my eyes and gone with it. Yeah.
This is part of the trickiness of doing something. Like it's one thing to do MakerLab where you're just making a one of one for yourself, but now you're making something that is going out in the market. So you have to deal with things like Shun and the legality of the outsole. And even in your final design, you were telling me about a legality of like the 3 stripes that you had to contend with. And you actually did a really good design like workaround. So explain that real quick.
So basically, every day when we were doing, just every day of the project, we had meetings with legal, or if it wasn't us having legals, it was David or Leo having meetings with legal, seeing if our ideas will pass. And one of the criteria, which is such a shame because I think it can, like basically the Adidas stripes cannot be functional. There can be no function. It's purely
decorative.
Brand. To demonstrate the brand. So I think originally the EQT support was a function. This detail here on the strap going through here, joining to the laces, was a kind of like
a reinforcement.
Reinforcement. But that's a no-go. So, to overcome that, we had to kind of put some hidden stitches in. So therefore, the stripes are not functional; they're just decorative.
But it's like a trick of the eye. It
is a trick of the eye. Yeah.
That's really, so the lawyers told you can't do this, and then you went back and just found a solution.
Yeah, I mean
that allowed you to keep doing it.
That was basically the project for everyone. Everyone involved.
The lawyers are a collaborator, actually.
Well, I actually did pitch them an idea.
You pitched the lawyers an idea?
Yeah, no, like on the 3rd day of being like, no, you can't do, I was like, how about you write some legal jargon, some disclaimers, and I'll print it on the shoe. Right? And then when it goes to court, you just like, it's there. It's written.
Right?
Yeah, you can do what you want with the stripes.
I'm sure they didn't like that idea.
Well, they chuckled and said no. It's not happening.
Right.
And there were a few other things that I couldn't do. Being that the shoe is kind of dual branded with like ZX 8000 and ZX 500 fabric, and the EQT, I kind of wanted to dual brand it. Like originals branding, performance branding, torsion branding,
which is tough,
is not a, I kind of wanted to break the mold on that one, but it didn't go.
Helen, speaking about that, were there things in your design that you were told wouldn't work or couldn't work, and then you had to like throw the Helen hammer down? And
Jeez, you don't want to see that, man.
So I think, as Alex said, like we all came across like different hurdles. For me, I guess the biggest challenge was that my own work, everything I make is bespoke, same as these guys, you know, and it's all one of one, and everything I use, the material has this really like authenticity to it. So I really wanted to make sure the shoe had that feeling, even though it's a mass-produced product. So I really pushed the factory a lot to try and hack their processes, basically, to see if those things were possible. So, for example, on the sole was probably the time I had to take a little 5 minutes outside because essentially this like fringe that you see here on the sole is from the mold process. So it's like a 2-part mold, and when it squashes, the material like seeps out of the side. So you get this like ginormous fringe around the edge, and obviously the main one is like really big, and sometimes it even connects the two shoes together, so it's not really perfect.
But you sliced that off. You're supposed to slice that off.
So this is the thing. When I went and saw the process, I was like, oh, that's so cool. And then I saw the girl there slicing it, and I was like, oh, can I have a go? And they were like, yeah, sure. So then I sliced it really badly, because obviously I had no idea what I was doing. And it was really wonky and wobbly. And then I was like, cool, I want it like that.
Yeah.
And they were a bit like, oh, Helen, no, we can't have it like that. That's not possible.
Right.
And then not only that, but I also wanted to add this. So you can see at the top there's like another fringe here.
Yeah.
And then, you know, after I was told that I couldn't do either, they were like, oh, you can just have the bottom one. I was like, no, we need to have both. So in the end, amazing guys at the factory managed to be able to do both.
They're also different, like every single one is cut out differently.
Yeah, exactly. So
it's not like they created a mold to make it look like a mistake.
And I think that was something really difficult for the factory to be able to get their head around.
Yeah.
Because I was really like, no, literally you just sit there and just do it really wonky. And they were kind of like, oh, we don't know how to do it wonky. Yeah, because obviously everything they do is so incredibly perfect. So it's kind of that element of being able to get that bespoke nature into a mass-produced product where every single one of these is going to be slightly different. And to the fact that when I opened my pair, on mine it's like super cut up and wonky, and I was wondering if they knew that it was my pair, so they did it on purpose, like
really bad.
Really
there you
bad,
go.
Yeah. So that was a thing, and then folding the stripes onto the tooling was something that had never been done before, but I really wanted it to look like the stripes were like unpicked and folded down.
Yeah.
This on the toe is the actual size label. So if you look on that, only. Yeah. So it's usually, steal that off you. It's usually like inside of the tongue lining here, where it is on most shoes. But because the way that I constructed this shoe is from all the pattern pieces of the shoe are in a different location. So this is actually the tongue lining. Oh. So therefore, I wanted the size label to be as it would be on the actual tongue lining.
I see. Clever.
So on the left shoe, you haven't got a label inside the lining, because the only way we could get around that legally was to have
there can only be one size label.
Sticker.
Right.
So this one's on here and this one's on the actual lining.
What a pain in the neck you
So so I did put them through their paces a little bit with all those things, but
cool.
That's just a few stories. There's so many more, but yeah.
I know. So there's a documentary film that is out that you can watch the full story. We're going to premiere it tomorrow, so you could get the full detailed behind the scenes stories of all the agony of defeat, the spoils of victory, everything. It's amazing. So what I want to do now is bring on some of the Adidas heads that were part of this project to help make this happen. So if you guys could kindly shift down. No, sit here. This is like the talk show where like you slide down the sofa. And then we'll bring on the next 3 guests. What's up?
What up?
Are you all mic'd?
Yeah,
Mic'd?
all mic'd.
Okay, cool. All right, so now we have, MakerLab is all well and good. Oh no, you guys can sit here. God, you guys are not shuffled off, Jesus. Shun, sit here.
Shun, go in the middle.
Yeah.
Go on the edge.
They're like all in the corner. Okay, so I mean, the MakerLab project is obviously all about celebrating the creator, right, and where that stems from, but there's still a machine behind all of this that has to, A, make it come to fruition, and then B, make sure that after it comes out, it's not a complete debacle, right? And so I think, and fingers are still crossed on that one, but we'll see. But let's introduce yourself. You 3 guys were instrumental in making this project happen from the Adidas side. So from my left, go ahead.
Yeah, Jose Cabaco, and I'm a MakerLab Creative Director.
I'm Tareq Nazlawy. I'm Senior Director of Digital Innovation at Adidas, and I'm the Program Lead for MakerLab.
My name is Yohan. I'm director for Statement. It's the part of Adidas that does the collaborations for the brand. Also heading up the consortium, which is like a series of shoes catered for like top retailers around the world.
Cool. So Jose, let's start with you. You seem to be, after we heard from some of the creators, you seem to be like the guy who shot out the bat signal. And you were like, okay, I got to get these guys now, right?
Yeah,
So,
it was a combination of myself and Yohan, actually.
Oh, okay.
Yohan was, I did pick up the phone for, well, not me, a colleague of mine. I asked her to call Helen and Alex.
Yeah.
And then we were looking for a third designer, and Yohan brought RECOUTURE.
Oh, okay.
I've been following Shun on Instagram for a bit, and I'm like, I was always kind of thinking, I really want to do something with this guy. I didn't know he was a guy or a girl at the time either. Just right. Just like RECOUTURE, and then when this opportunity came up, I'm like, yo.
Yeah, but then Yohan and I went in a back and forth because it was like, I don't know, Yohan, because if we bring him, I know exactly what he's going to be doing already. So
because he has a signature.
Because he's doing that thing of the toolings and all that, and I was like, okay, we'll bring him, but we're going to tell him that he's not going to be doing that.
Just to push him.
We're going to push him into a totally different territory, and he was game for that, so that was cool.
And also part of the conversation was like, because campus has such a big cultural following in Japan, I just felt like as a bonus to have that representation will be such an important part, just a documentary and just having the culture of campus just coming through.
Right.
Yeah.
Like multiple franchises, right?
Yeah.
Before they die, they have a last shot at life in Japan.
Yeah. They always
because
are
it's a great culture that keeps alive so much of the DNA of brands that tend to be neglected or abandoned very rapidly.
Yep.
And so it was important for us to definitely tap into the region, and I thought it was an amazing outcome to have Shun join us.
Yeah. Right. Talk about why MakerLab exists.
Yeah. Well, look, I mean, as a brand, like I would say that it's been for quite a while. The idea of being, the creator sports brand and really trying to be the brand which creators would gravitate to become part of. That's actually become part of our DNA now. It's been a long journey to get there, and you can look at a lot of breadcrumbs along the way.
Yeah.
And you mentioned at the beginning as well that it's new, but it's not that new.
Right.
So this place is really kind of the first real major
Physical,
manifestation of that.
Yeah.
But what we realized is that when we look backwards, we start to spot the things that are really resonating. And with what we're doing now with Campus 80s, and what we're thinking also for the future is we want to try and find out more and more ways that we can open up our infrastructure, open up our assets, open up our talent for more people to leverage that as well. Otherwise, we have to create everything as the brand.
Right.
To put it like that. And there's so much creative capital out there. I mean, it's also an honor to be in the room with all of you guys, because I would consider this to be a case in point. That it's kind of almost wasteful to centralize all of that stuff and not make it accessible. So the idea really is that we want to create a platform where people can access all of that and grow and transform. And if you guys watch the documentary, you also see that it really celebrates the ups and downs of the creative process, the courage it takes to create as well, to stand behind your ideas, to fight with where the edge of the envelope is, and through that becomes there's a deeply human. It's a deeply human act. It's a deeply human story. So not only is it something which is good for reinforcing who we say we are as the creative sports brand, is something where we actually think it gives an opportunity for people to really grow. And we want to do more of that. And and as you can see from the outcome is fresher. We would never have come up with these shoes ourselves. And that's what we want, is unseen innovation to come from this process.
So Jose, when MakerLab first was invented, right, some 3-4 years ago, or maybe even more behind the scenes.
Well, 100 years ago.
Oh yeah, you could say that, yeah. But was this moment with these three creators on the blueprint on day one?
No, I think
It looks perfectly perfect synchronicity.
If you look at it when it started internally, it was about like you
the
said,
internal staff
get people back into materialization, tactility, 3D behavior, shaping, form, draping, fluidity of materials, a solid structure that you can build with them, and accelerate with that or trigger with that new languages and new outcomes. And it was a success. Not only got people excited because you probably spend too much time on an iPad or a Wacom or a computer doing a lot of line art, and you don't get to see in an immediate way what does that look like in 3D. You have to wait for the first sample round and the second and the third. And you go on a tremendously long time of back and forth that you can get rid of.
Yeah, and there's a disconnection between your idea and the shoe itself, because you're just sort of like waiting for it to come back.
And so when we do that and we see the kids inside taking over and the excitement to get your hands on, we went on to a consumer facing. And then there's hundreds of kids inside coming out and getting excited about doing this. And so it's clearly a destination that it's contagious in terms of discovery, exploration, also releases you from working on existing CADs that are in itself a boundary for you to not
fill in the
cross
colors,
over. And this opens up new patterns, new approaches, new forms, and we kept going on it.
Right. Amazing. Yohan, I got a question for you. So these initiatives are always well and good, but if they don't return fuel back into the mothership, they tend to die really quickly. So it's up to you guys to also figure out how this becomes available to the public, how people can actually buy into this, right? And you know as well as I do that in this day and age, there are so many ways to cop highly desired shoes these days, right? There's like drops and lineups and raffles and all this stuff. There's another first that is happening with this MakerLab project, which is the way you guys are actually releasing the shoes themselves. Can you shed light on how these are dropping?
Yeah. So the kind of one of the key words for this process was like a decentralization, and we wanted to put the power in the hands of the creators that we wanted to work with, and part of that process was also the valuation. We know how much normal campus costs, and a lot of that is based on historical data. If you ask, the value versus the price, sometimes there's a discrepancy. And we're working with 3 individuals who make their own individual pieces, and it's usually handmade one-off things that are pretty much unaffordable to many people.
They're like priceless for the most part.
I mean, you can, but you got to pay for to commission that, right?
Right.
But we have this thing where now you take something that's usually only available to one at a time, and if you want to get a Shun's shoe, like you have to pretty much travel to Tokyo and then get it made for you and wait to get that happen. We were able to produce that for a certain amount, but we still wanted to keep that idea of decentralization, which is why we wanted to sell it in kind of like a blind Dutch auction, which is like...
Yeah, these have no MSRP, essentially.
No MSRP. So even the price, we wanted to leave it up to, the fans.
People.
The people who resonated with that design. You evaluate it, So it's not us to say that's how much this is worth, because, it's kind of like when you're an artist even, or when you try to evaluate an artwork, it's almost kind of who are we to put a value on that, So we wanted to do that, leave it up to the market in a way, market forces, So we have a limited supply. We see what the demand is like, and it's going to be interesting. So I want to see, what that really turns out into.
Aren't there people at the brand and on the creative side maybe that are scared shitless of this idea?
Yeah, for sure.
Not about that only, about everything.
I would say that it's funny. So Johan's describing basically the IPO process, right? And we're working with StockX to bring these out. And that wasn't something we thought of late down the line. It was something that was actually really important from the very beginning for us to think about, like, yeah, we're going to try and disrupt internally how stuff is how stuff is done, how stuff is created,
and sold,
and the go-to-market process, the retail process, it had to be different. And so, you know, when we first started kicking around the idea and we got into a conversation with StockX, it was quite interesting, like how this IPO mechanic became something which, you know, they had in mind and we had in mind, because like we were like, we need to do something different. It needs to be something fun, right? But it also needs to be something fair, right? You know, and that's why, you know, the IPO mechanic is something which, you know, like you have to bid what you think is right. You know, and you don't know what everybody else is doing.
So it's your true, what you think is the value of this product.
Exactly.
So much you're willing to put down for it. Right.
And it's not just highest bidder wins, right?
No.
So explain how that's going to work.
Yeah. So basically, like, there's a limited supply of these things, right? So 333 pairs for each of the designs. And you know, on eBay, it's normally like there's one thing and you bid and like the highest bid wins, and you can kind of see if you're in or if you're out. This works a bit differently. This, you just decide what you want to pay
for your size.
For your size, right? But basically, once you have everybody bidding, and there's only 333 pairs, you stack up all the bids, highest to lowest, and bid number 333, that sets what's called the clearing price. Right? And everybody who bid higher than that just pays that. Right? So it's kind of, there's a bit of thinking to do, right? Like, you could bid like $1 million because you're like, I definitely want a pair, and I know there's going to be 332 other guys or girls who make a bid, but I want to definitely get one. If everybody else has the same idea, guess what's going to happen, right? You know? But
someone's going to jail.
Their
credit card is maxed
out. So, but then on the flip side, you know, if you think, oh, I could just bid what I think is fair, right? Then, and you lowball it, you don't stand a chance. So that's why it's like, it's taking the wisdom of the crowd here to set a price that they think's fair, and that actually is not just we'll drop it for campus plus a little bit, and then everybody will try and buy them and then flip them in the resale market anyway, right? We want these guys to directly benefit as well from the price that these things sell at. It's the first time we do it, right? And I think, you know, even for StockX, I know that they've done this once or twice before, but it's still in early days as well. So we're really learning about how this retail model works, but it felt like a good fit for this project.
Jose, talk about a little bit how, what's really interesting about MakerLab is, as you said, it started as an internal thing for staff only. Then it actually went out to like a full democratic thing at events and like Hype Fest and stuff, where like just any kid could come in and make a shoe on their own. And then it seemed like you took learnings from that and then brought it back in to do the iteration of MakerLab that you see now. What is the next evolution?
The next evolution.
Do you already know?
Well, we have all of us have dreams, right? And we would love to think about the best scenario possible, but one thing at a time. We've been coming on a journey that started internally, moved into generating a destination like the Brooklyn Farm. We saw the benefit continuing to grow. We took it to 747, monster success. We took it then to launch POD, great. Then Hype Fest, then Intersect, then Paris Fashion Week. At every iteration, it was never the same thing. There was always a fundamental shift into the ingredients, into the type of people that are invited to have an opportunity to be a part of. The franchises changed at everyone. 747, it was pretty much 7 or 8 toolings and absolute freedom on uppers. So it was a lot of on-the-spot patterning. POD was focused on POD, but we were launching the new one when we brought in some toolboxes from the original one. So we was remixing the old and the new. Then we go to Hype Fest, was on the Oswego's, and then we move into Intersect, continue to carry over those franchises, and then Paris Fashion Week was to launch for the first time the SC Premier. Yep. But this time mixing in, like Alex told you guys, 8 artisan specialty craftsmen that work in the fashion industry for sometimes almost 100 years in the business, that worked with the names nowadays at the doors of the brands when they were still alive. And we mashed up that super old craft with a new crowd. Right. And now for the first time and finally, because all these iterations were about either one shoe, a left side or a right side, and you would put in your shelf and you would be super proud of all you could brag in social media, but it would never see the light of the day. And we saw too much value on the ideas that were coming to the table to be left to abandonment, right? So we finally got to this place where we go, okay, this time we go to market and we focus on 3 people. Next time, one thing we know for sure, we don't want to go back to just inviting people to work and do a shoe that sits on a shelf. So guaranteed that whatever we do next will go to market. Yep. How are we going to do it? Is it going to stay at 3 people? Is it going to open up to 30, 40, 50? Let's wait and see.
Okay. One more thing that I wanted to bring up is the actual documentation process of this whole thing, right?
Yeah.
There's like
that was another aspect.
Yeah, there's like photography, videography, documentary. So from the designer's standpoint, you guys are still mic'd, so you can talk. But like, so out of, on top of the brief, on top of everything else that had to happen in the speed, they were like, by the way, here's a camera crew that's gonna follow you around for the next 2 weeks. How did that affect the design process? I'm sure it had to have affected the whole environment.
Really annoying.
It was really annoying.
No, I mean.
Now you know what it's like to be like a reality star.
It was another spectrum to the project in the sense of. I think again, it's a testament to the people involved. From Adidas to the photographers to the filmers, they appreciated that we had something to do and it was difficult, and vice versa. We appreciated, they had something to do, and we're, a team. It's a team effort. We're the names of the project, in the video, but. There's so many people behind the scene that made this happen. All the amazing people at Adidas that they're doing this as a side project on top of what they have to do. They're doing it for the love, and they made it really, everything. We all compromised. If they said we need you all day tomorrow, and I said, look, I'm really stuck here. I'm going to be here tomorrow. They was okay, right. You do your thing. We'll work around that. We can do it another day. And I would say, let's do it here or there. Right now, this is my creative process. I need to be here doing this. And they no one got angry, no one quibbled. They might have cussed me out behind my back, but to my face, they were nice. You do your thing. So it was an added element to the.
Shun, how does, I don't know if you finished answering you, but does Shun used to having like a camera crew in front of him as well?
So just as Yohan mentioned, that Shun is a really secretive person. On Instagram, you only see his work, his shoes. You don't really see him. And he likes to keep it that way because he's quite shy. But joining this project, he was required to do all sorts of things he usually wouldn't do, like shoveling in the sandpit. For like the video.
Drowned in the bowl.
And
it'll make sense when you
in the video, and like submerging himself in the bathtub and all of that.
What is this, like a fraternity hazing? What were you guys doing to him? Submerging him in a bathtub?
When we went after this, we were looking at the 3 of them as 3 characters that we needed to separate so that you don't end up finding yourself investing in the overlap, because they all overlap in backgrounds, skill sets, love for sneakers, and they are all making a shoe. So we wanted to tap into, if we wanted to laser focus on one trait of personality, Shun was the Zen, minimalist, secretive guy that spends hours looking at a shoe, spinning it around, quiet in his own head before he goes and says something about it, right? Alex already told you, and you can see how that looks like working, is all over the place, a million ideas, too much absorption of information, wanting to do 8 shoes, not just one that we were hoping for, and that defined his personality of being this guy that is trying to do a lot of things and struggling to contain his ideas, but always finding a way to ground himself into let's get shit done. And Helen, very clear from the beginning about deconstruction, reconstruction, not reconstruction in a way that it's what you would expect, but by displacing the patterns. But she is kind of a mix of Alex and Shun. She has a very clear idea of what she wants to do, but then she's all over the place like Alex, trying to get to the place that she is wanting to do.
Right.
And the outcome is these 3 amazing things that you see here. That we surrounded, like you said, with a crew of people from our teams on the ground with them, development, project management. But we handpicked a crew that was this photographer and then this photographer, because he doesn't just do photography. We pick him because he starts, he's an image maker that starts with photography, but then has layers of deconstruction of photography in order to create images. So we also picked a photographer to match, for example, your work. And we knew that his base would be the starting point for Alex and Shun's capturing, but we wanted to add then another layer of his treatment that ended up being dominated by how we portrayed Alex.
So you didn't go with the usual.
We didn't go to this as usual. Let's hire an agency or tap into an agency of records that we may have already and commission them to execute the documentation of this. We want people to understand that MakerLab is not just a footwear design platform. It's as relevant apparel, graphic design, retail, communication. And so we picked what we thought would be the best people in different areas to come together, not having ever worked together, all of them, and add to the hurdle, add to the unexpected. And the outcome is, I can tell you without hesitation, a team of 15 new best friends that came out of this. And that's the most important thing in the end of it.
Helen, do you agree that the ancillary team was a huge part of this equation?
Oh yeah, 100%. I think as these guys touched on, when we got there, we had no idea what to expect, and suddenly, oh, this is the production crew, and this is the film crew, and this is the photographers, and these are the MakerLab people, and these are the developers. And you're like,
I won't remember any of your names.
Yeah. But then, like, the more we got to know people, we built up a rapport with them, and like as Jose said, these guys selected everyone so carefully. So we realized that everyone was in this project because they cared about the project, and that really, I guess, like, put us at ease a little bit, because we knew that we could trust in the process, and we knew that whatever was going to come out of the end was going to be good. And exactly as Jose said, we spent a week together in Germany and a week together in Vietnam, and it was very intense, even just to be around the same amount of people for that much, time.
Yeah.
So, to actually come out of that being mates and, having this collective experience, and you'll see from the video, it starts with me like in the pub, and I didn't realize that was going to be the start of the film, and we're all just having like a heart to heart, and I'm basically saying exactly what I just said now. And the guys decided to put that at the start of the film. So I think in a way that just summarizes all of our emotions in this project, and we really, we could trust in it, which was kind of a relief.
Yeah. All right. Well put. Okay. So these shoes. Oh yeah. You want to add something?
Cool one thing on that. Like Tareq mentioned earlier about the IPO being a part of the process from the start. The documentary was also part of the process from the start, because I'm sure you guys can imagine, but like there's so much drama that's happening behind any new release or any new creation. It's not just like some robots putting in a new color and it comes out. Maybe that's the case for some, but we
Stop.
we really wanted to know. We knew this is going to be special, and we knew we wanted to show just what goes into bringing something to life. What it takes to go from one production, and how much like effort it takes to go from 1 to like 333. It seems like not that much, but how much it takes, and how large a team, how big a machine it takes to be able to bring that to life. Right. And also I think it really gives a bit of background to the shoe. You don't just see the shoe as the shoe. You see it connected to whoever made it. You see the behind story of it. Yeah. You know, so to me, like from a marketing background, I kind of call it the Breaking Bad effect. You know, where you know you watch this guy from Breaking Bad, you know, develop into the character.
Not Shun.
Not yet. I'm saying, but you watch this guy develop, and even though he turns out to be this like pretty bad guy at the end, you still kind of sympathize with him. You kind of want him to do well, you know. And like I'm like, if that can work for a meth maker, maybe it'll work for shoes too, you know. But this is something that, you know, we've always been talking about, like how can we really bring people into that process? How can we, you know, pull the curtains back and show people the process? And I think that's kind of the spirit of MakerLab.
That's the most inspiring thing.
Yeah.
And if I had to pinpoint one thing that makes all of this worth it, whatever is the 333 value of the bead, of the size, aside from a group of people that bonded and came out of this with relationships and stories to tell forever, it's like one thing that Shun said, being the reserved, super contained guy that he is, that thought that was never going to leave Japan and Shibuya, because was putting probably too much power into his inability to communicate in another language. The fact that this experience makes him come out of it saying that he now just wants to go out in the world and grow and enrich his skill set with all the culture that comes from different sources. I mean, that is priceless, right? So that in the end should be the takeaway for everything that anyone gets their hands and heads around it and goes through it.
Word. So these shoes will go IPO on StockX on the 15th?
Yeah.
At night? What time? Do you know?
9 o'clock.
9 o'clock.
Okay, 9 p.m. on the 15th. That means by the time you're listening to this podcast, you can go to StockX.
Bam, the plug
and
right
see
there.
how this whole experiment has turned out, and we'll see if these guys have jobs by then.
Even better. Really, thank you guys for coming. It's a day off at school that you made the effort to keep it on. Not just happy to have you here, but happy to welcome you all tomorrow at the party as well. So you're all invited.
All right.
You just need to leave us the names if we don't have it already. It will be at the door. Please check with some of us the address, but you can come.
All right. Well, thanks a lot, guys. Thank you very much. Are you ready to boom? Okay, so we have a microphone on a very long stick. And if anyone has any questions, raise your hand and the stick will come to you. All right, we have one right here.
I guess a question I have is, obviously you all have very different cultures, so how did the culture that you come from influence the shoe that you design, and then also just more generally your design practice?
Awesome.
Who wants to start? Go on, Alex.
I'll sum it up for you. How does your cultural background and upbringing affect the shoe that we're seeing here right now?
I don't know. I guess sneaker background kind of stems maybe. It's not really. Well, I'm kind of stuck on this one actually.
I feel like I could answer this for you.
Oh yeah, well go for it then.
To me, you're like a shoe historian. You're like the librarian at a sneaker museum.
Yeah.
And your shoe to me is like if you were able to glean off all of the education you know about sneaker design from decades, like it all went into your shoe. That's what I feel like.
Yeah, pretty much. But it's not determined from where I'm from, though, right?
Oh, well, whatever. Yeah, okay.
That was the bit I was struggling.
I don't think she meant like your upbringing, but just where you came from.
Yeah.
But that to me, I mean, like, did you feel that way? That like that?
Yeah, for sure. Growing up, I had big love for like moccasin shoes and boat shoes and obviously sneakers. And I guess a lot of it actually stems from the playground. What was the shoe to wear on the playground, and so on and so on. And then there was this like other story about the clubs. So like in the early 90s, it was like no sneakers, no hats, no hoodies.
Yes.
So I just thought, just imagine. I mean, I already come up with the concept, but then like, the marketing mind of mine was like, just imagine you made a sneaker that a security guard didn't know was a sneaker or a shoe. He's like, go on. I mean, that's obsolete. I guess only the old people would know about that rule. The young kids
now you
these
have to wear
days.
sneakers to get into it. You don't get in with dress shoes on now. Helen, how about you?
Yeah, I think for me, I guess going back to like my own personal history, my parents are very creative. So my dad is a design engineer and my mum used to make clothes. So I always was obsessed with very tactile things, like looking at materials and fabrics were always like in my house, and like my grandma taught me how to knit, so I was always like playing with fabrics. And then my dad is very engineer based, so he actually makes stair lifts, but he is super.
What does he make?
Stair lifts, like that help like,
Stanner
old
stair
people go up the
lift.
stairs.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, Stanner. But yeah, so he's very technical. So those kind of two things combined for me in a way that I didn't know that footwear was a thing that you could study. I always was thinking about doing fashion and then maybe architecture, maybe product design. And then I stumbled across the University of Northampton, which basically does footwear design. And Northampton is like a home for footwear in the UK. And I saw their course and I was like, oh my God, this is perfect because it kind of combines everything that I'm interested in into one like perfectly formed product. So that's where I started looking at shoes, and then getting into sneakers, I started with these more traditional shoes and brogues at Northampton, and then I wanted to make a sneaker because I didn't know how they were made. And so I started taking them apart to understand how they were made. And that's where I got this kind of deconstructed aesthetic from. And then that just kind of like blew up, I guess, and people were really interested in what I was doing. So then the more I did that, when I came to this shoe, I really wanted to try and get all those elements across in a way that seemed authentic, to make parts of it, as we were saying earlier, that are still one-off. So everybody's shoe is still unique. And you also have a chance to customize it and play with it yourself, because I think that like, for me, when people contact me on my Instagram and they kind of say like, oh, I've made this shoe inspired by you, I find that that's the best thing that I can do to inspire people. So, I wanted to make, on the heel tab here, it has like a little stitch which you can cut, and if you cut it, then it like, you get like a heel tab reveal like this. So you can choose, but once you've cut it, it's cut, so you can't put it back unless you choose to fix it yourself. So, I wanted to put these little elements in there, things that you can change. And even Jose said to me earlier, as soon as I get my shoe, I'm cutting this fringe off.
No, not the fringe. I'm cutting the tab, not the fringe. The fringe stays.
I wanted to create a product that inspired people to play with it a little bit as well.
And I think Helen even inspired like factory people to be creative, that aren't used to doing that.
And it's everybody's own little touches, the person that made this, and even it has on it a factory tag, which is basically when you get a sample, you get this tag and you write down the comments, and this is the real comments and remarks from Lynn, which was one of the girls that worked in the factory, and she just wrote this like beautifully neat comments, which is just so different to how I like do anything. So I was like, oh, that's so nice, let's scan it and let's make it into a feature for the shoe. So I just wanted to try and include
I gotta show you the
everybody
favorite
on the
part.
project.
This is Helen's box, and there's when I got this in the mail, I was like, oh wait, they left a Post-it on it, and I was like, what the hell? It's like part of the packaging.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and this was actually really nice. When I was designing the packaging, I said to my intern, George, I was like, is this stupid or is this nice? Like, I think it's cool. It's like a real post-it that I actually wrote like while I was in the factory. I was inspired by that. And then he said to me that if he got this box, he would feel like he was part of the process. And I was like, boom, that's going on.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Shun,
はい
dozo.
So coming from a really Japanese Japanese upbringing, he thought that the original campus shoes that were sold in Japan, they were made in 4 colors, and they were all in sweet leather. And he thought that those 4 colors were actually bore a really close resemblance to Japan as a nation because they were really subtle, subdued colors. And Japan is a nation like that. Like the Japanese people are subdued, they're really calm and gentle. So, and also like there's some elegance to it. So he thought he should keep those 4 elements, the 4 colors in them, and also 靴の紐とかそういうのだ話さなくていいかな。
まあでもとりあえずパーツは全部その4つを解体してそのパーツのみで作った。
So also Japanese people are really precise. They're known for precision, and the theme of his shoes is a mistake. So he wanted to reflect that in the theme, like an anti-theme thing. When he had the shoes deconstructed, he didn't have like the steps to put them back. He wasn't given like the numbers on the plan, the blueprint. So he didn't know how to put them back because usually when he gets an order to customize someone's shoe, he deconstructs them. So he knows how to put them back. But this time the factory did it for them. They constructed the shoes for him, so he didn't know. And being Japanese is like, oh no, where's my order? Like, oh no, my rules. So he did something totally opposite. He, went out of his comfort zone, and that, gave way to this final product.
Nice.
I love the detail of stitching the tongue on one of the sides only between the eye stay and the 3 stripes and the medial pattern. It's a really awesome detail.
Yeah. And I think Campus was always had a big following in Japan. So even when the popularity of Campus dipped in Europe and US, so maybe you don't really see those on the shelf anymore. In Japan, because it was still so popular, we had carryovers like the industry term. Yeah, we were just the same color over and over again.
Yep.
Exclusive to Japan. So those 4 colors, you would always find that.
Japan 4 or something. What's it called? Is there a name for it?
Yeah. So there's the 4. Yeah, Japan 4 Campus 80s. And it doesn't say Campus on it. It's just 4 colors, always available in Japan.
Wow.
And Shun, when he first came to Germany, he just wanted to get more samples to play around with. And he goes to the store expecting to see these shoes everywhere because that's how it is in Japan. And he comes to Germany and it's like, oh, these shoes aren't here. Which is where he found, which is when he found out it was Japan kind of exclusive carryover. And for him to put those 4 in one shoe to me was like, it was such a cool idea just to represent where he's coming from. So I think to answer your question, to me that's like the embodiment of kind of representing Japan and maybe what his craft is as well.
Yep.
I think we kind of veered away from your question. So
We have any other questions? Yes. In the middle, yeah. Yes.
Yeah, so I find with the kind of emergence of these kind of custom sneakers, it seems like the designer is almost kind of has free range in that they don't have allegiance to a certain brand. So if they choose to make 1 pair of shoes or they choose to make a few, I'm just curious how it felt to bump it up to 333 pairs to 1 shoe to 1 brand.
That's a good question for Helen. I think,
Yeah, I was going to say, I think for me, it was super exciting because when I work in my studio, I work with recycled sneakers, so I kind of take whatever I can get. But it was so exciting for me to just be, with Adidas on this project because, you have those things that are so synonymous, the stripes, the trefoil, all those sort of things. So it was super fun to play with that branding, which I think was a bit of a struggle for the legal team because all of us were like, great, let's play with the stripes and let's play with the trefoil. And then they're like, no, please don't.
Exactly like that.
But yeah. But I think that, for all of us, that was super exciting. But in terms of going to the 333 pairs, I think I kind of touched on it earlier. It was quite scary, and you'll see in the documentary as well, there's a point where I kind of have a bit of a struggle with that because everything I make is so unique, and I really wanted to make sure that the product that I gave to the consumers and to you guys had that same feeling, and it didn't feel like that was taken away. So it was a lot of challenges, but as we said earlier, the team were there to help, and especially the factory team were amazing, and the development, when I really put my foot down and said, this needs to be like this, they were like, okay, we're gonna do it, and it happened. So I don't know if that kind of answers your question.
Any other question? Yes, lady in the back.
Hi, so Shun talked about this in his stories. This is more for Helen and Alex now. What inspired your color story for your shoe?
My color story?
Which color?
It was the crayon box of 72 colors.
I let my youngest go for it. No. So basically, the concept of my customization when I first started doing it was bringing kind of shoes and footwear and sneakers together, like formal shoes, brogues or deck shoes and moccasins, and those shoes are more earthy kind of colors, browns and blacks. And that's what I've done here in a juxtaposition of color. So, sneakers are very loud colors, bright colors, so I've mixed, and that goes through to the fabrics. So there's kind of a traditional nubuck in there, in brown tones, and then mixing it with like meshes of sneakers and then colors, bright colors. And I think that's kind of true with all my works in the past. You'll see that there's a real play with color. Also, it was a nod to Adidas, because I feel personally, I think some people look at me weird when I say this, but Adidas have a different take on color, I think unique to other brands, where they put colors where, on paper, I feel, and I think this is more of a nod to the archive of Adidas as well as now, you could see very different take on color. In the 80s and 90s, they would put obscure colors together that on paper or even on the shelf wouldn't work. But once you got them on your foot, would just blow your mind, Mm-hmm. And that's what I tried to do here overnight, was mix like, I think 14 different colors together and have one go at it. So,
Clearly you see he loves ZX colorways. You can see probably 2 colorways there. You see a little nod to EQTs.
Yeah. And then there's the kind of nubuck brown of a normal kind of moccasin shoe.
Yep.
Where's the purple come from?
Shut up. It's just like another color. I was like, look, you can't have 5 colors. That would look weird. You need to go out of your way to have like 14, and then there's a story in that. Maybe.
Right. All right, and then there's Helen with 18 shades of white.
Yeah, exactly. So
overnight, right?
Yeah, exactly. So all the samples that we'd done are actually in a kind of grey colour, and that was because, again, when I work with materials in my studio, I use the materials that I get, so I never impact the colour. I always just use the colour that I get. So when we got given the samples to take apart, they just happened to be this grey nubuck. So then all the samples I kept creating were in this grey colour. And then, I was thinking about it, and I was like, I don't know about grey. I don't really, I'm not sure about that colour, and I don't know if I would wear it. And then I kind of thought back to my own process and how, with everything I do is about the process of wearing something. And with white, it picks up marks and memories in products. And actually, I was just looking at your 3 shoes in the front row earlier, and I was like, those guys' shoes look so nice, I need to take a picture. Because those sort of processes of wearing are really important to me. So I thought that white kind of made sense. And going back to this tab, you'll actually see on here one of the changes is change color to white. So that was the 3rd pullover, 13th of the 7th, which is probably 2 days before the end of the project. And I'm like, guys, I want to change the whole color. I was like, okay, thank you. And I wanted to, again, nod to the different materials. So you've got the nubuck, you've got the suede, you've got the leather, and all those are kind of different tones of white, and even the eyelet reinforcement, and the lace. So yeah, just to show the kind of different personalities of the white, I guess, and then hopefully they'll get a bit more messed up as you wear it.
Cool. All right, I think we have time for one more question. Front row.
Yeah. So my question is about the creative process. Like with the three of you guys being so different, right? During this design process, did you guys collaborate or share ideas or bounce back anything, or was it like you guys working on your own thing?
No, that's quite a good question. I think specifically for us, I mean, you can see in the end result of our shoes there, we have very different styles, and I think we appeal to there's lap over of appeal with people, but we have our demographics and styles, and I think every day we bonded, really. We were in the same situation. We had the same fears, the same concerns, the same battles with legal and where we were going to go. So, we actually formed a real friendship. We were there for each other. Trust, there was like highs and lows in every stage, You can imagine that someone is better at one stage than the other, and it's constantly up and down. When one person is down, the other person's up, but then, we're looking out for each other. And every day when we were coming up with our designs, we would sit at a table and we would brief our designs to each other and designers alike. And we would all have constructive input. I would be an open book. I remember cutting you down once, and I totally. You said that I was trying to put too much stuff in the shoe, and maybe you need to relax a bit. And I was like, no, but it was even busier than this. And I was like, no, I'm doing it. Stop. And then I remember being in Vietnam being like, Yohan was right. I should have listened to him. I sound like a complete prick. But, and being that, Adidas have their way of doing stuff and they're learning about us. But, because we have this mindset of, we can kind of relate, Mm-hmm. So, we would give each other, if Helen was stuck on something, we'd be like, Shun and I would be like, oh, maybe you could do it this way, and vice versa. Helen would, or if we were down, they would pick us up. And, so there was always, it was just great teamwork,
Yeah.
We never felt competitors or anything like that. And I think if someone that was invited to the group that was more my style, like a sneaker demographic doing sneaker, you'd feel a bit like, oh, what's he doing? Like looking at his stuff, being like, spilling your coffee on his work. But with this project, it was like, I think, in every aspect of the, from the camera guy to director to the, all the Adidas people, it was just so perfect. I mean, that's Jose and these
Picking
guys.
the right collaborators. Yeah. Does Shun want to add something to the co-collaboration process?
Yeah, so Shun's final product is definitely the outcome of everyone's creative output. One of them, he has a few examples. One of them is this number on the shoe, at the back of the shoe. Mm-hmm. This was from Helen's suggestion of putting the numbers on the outside. So, and also, he mentioned earlier about the shoelaces.
あとは商標は取ってなかったりとか、商売が全然できてないなっていうか、マーケティングというかできてないなって思って、リクチュールって並べちゃダメだった。だから靴には入れてないっていうのをまず。
And also, he wanted to put his brand name, his RECOUTURE brand on the shoes. But I think there was an illegal issue because it was not patented or something, his name, the brand name, so he had to put it on a box. And he wasn't allowed to spell it the way it was. He had to split them out. So that was also the result of everyone's suggestion. And somehow he incorporated Adidas in the word mashup. Some the letters.
So it became a graphic.
So this was really difficult for him.
Constraints are the mother of innovation.
Yes.
So, but he also wanted to say that this wasn't his idea. Like he didn't.
Noted.
He didn't think of this. He wanted to just make it like just black, all black without the white borders.
僕の前にあったハサミがギザギザだったから、それでカットしたものを写真で送ったらこれになっちゃった。
This was a mistake.
Love it.
Yeah, but
we'll get it right on MakerLab too.
But he just said that his shoe was called mistake, right? Or imperfection. So.
Yeah, だからいいじゃん。ミステイクだからいいんじゃないですか。
Can I just say, when you guys were in Vietnam, it must have been like hearing Nash talk first. You almost have to like close your ears, and then hearing Shun, you have to be like, oh, like, cause it's like, all right, man. Just saying, you know, like two totally different personalities. Helen, you want to answer that one too?
I've actually forgotten the question. I'm really sorry. What was it again?
How do you support each other?
Oh, the co-collaboration.
Oh yeah. Jennifer's input there. Yes, it was very collaborative. I think, kind of as these guys said, but going into the project, we really didn't know if it was going to be competitive. You know, are we going to have to like hide our ideas and like put our big inspiration boards like back to back and like hide in a little corner? But as soon as I met these guys, you know, we realized we were all in the same boat and we were all in it together. And we do all have overlaps in our aesthetic, but they're also all different. So I think actually being friendly with each other allowed us to collaborate better and almost allowed us to like push ourselves into our own section even more because we weren't trying to copy each other or compete with each other. And I think that was what was really inspiring also about this process, because it's another thing that's different to how other things have been done before, you know, just to celebrate all three of us equally and not try and put a difference on it was really, really nice. And as Alex said as well, that, you know, all the team were super friendly and helpful. So everybody just wanted the best for us. So I don't think it was maybe like the first day we were a bit daunted, but once we like met each other and we all like had a beer and we're like, oh God, do you know what you're doing? No, I've got no idea. Do you know what you're doing? No, I've got no clue.
Oh my God.
And then we were all like, okay, cool, we're all in this together.
I could have like imagined even before you guys went to Vietnam, because like I've been to factory trips before, as you have when you were working with the brand. Like it's a crazy hectic day at the factory, but I just already imagined like after the full crazy day, you guys go back to the hotel and just share a beer together, and like how much support that just would have given. You know, like I think if it was on your own.
Whilst being filmed, of course.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Always.
Yeah.
But I think that probably would have been a source of kind of moral support, I think, for each other.
Yeah.
And I think that was something that we wanted to.
Oh no, what's happening?
No, it's the automatic thing of the farm.
I think that's us telling us we gotta wrap it up. All right, well, thank you very much, everyone. That was great. Cool. Thanks for coming out, everyone. Hey, thanks for listening to this very special live episode with the Adidas MakerLab team. As always, you can find out more about the show and listen to other episodes at hypebeast.com/radio. You can subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. I personally use Anchor FM. Please do me a favor and leave a rating and comment and tell us what you think of the show. We're always trying to make it better. Also, tell a friend about the show, share it on social media. Anything you could do to spread the love helps. We also occasionally answer listener questions on the show. So if you have a question, shoot it over to me on Twitter. I am at jeffstaple. The Business of Hype is created in collaboration with Bright Young Things. You can check out their work at byt.nyc. Our director is Daniel Navetta. Our audio engineer is David Rogers-Berry. Our associate producers are Sydney Pacumpra and Christina Hong. This episode was recorded at Sibling Rivalry Studio and on location at the Brooklyn Creator Farm in Brooklyn, New York. I'm Jeff Staple, and you've been listening to The Business of Hype on Hypebeast Radio. And then, 12 days later. All right. So, guys, thanks for hopping on this phone call, this post-mortem phone call. Can everyone introduce themselves? Who's on the line? Who's on the party line?
Yeah, Tareq Nazlawy, Digital Strategy, Adidas.
Yohan Ham, Statement, Adidas.
Jose Cabaco, MakerLab Creative Director.
Great to have you guys back on. You've appeared in various podcasts and meetups and events and stuff like that, so it's great to have you guys back on. I wanted to do, just to bring the listener back into real time. We are now post-IPO on MakerLab. It's been about a week after IPO, I think. And I just wanted to get, like your thoughts now that you've seen this experimental project become live. I just want to get your thoughts from each of you on your respective different expertises and the sort of the vision of the company that like you're sort of overseeing, creative, sales, digital. Your thoughts on how this all went down.
Yeah.
Cool.
That so picking up where we left off, Jeff, right? So last time that we saw you, it was the night that we went live. And as you can remember, like for the creators and for us, none of us was totally sure what was going to happen, right? Like how many bids were we going to get, and how was how was each of the guys' shoe going to perform when it came to the IPO in terms of how would the clearing price go? And I can tell you one thing: for the ensuing days, we were constantly like refreshing and checking and chatting with the StockX guys about how things were going, and it was pretty interesting. The night that we were all hanging out back in Brooklyn, we saw quite quickly like a bunch of bids come in for these shoes, and it was amazing to see as well for the creators of the sneakers. They were like just overwhelmed with the fact that people were bidding on their sneakers. I'm not sure if you got a chance to chat with any of those guys. And then we saw like over the course of the 72 hours that it was running from, like we really got like a big run in the first day and a big run in the last day as well.
Okay.
So by the end of this process, to sort of get to the punchline, there were around 10,000 bids on these 3 pairs of sneakers. And in the end, the average clearing price for the campus sneakers that these guys designed was over $200. I think 205 actually, to be precise.
Okay. Across all 3.
Across all 3. But the interesting thing also was that it was pretty even across the 3. So we actually had like a pretty even split of bids, and around the average, I think the clearing price was plus or minus around $10 or so. Yeah. Right? So we had like Helen coming in around the 195 mark. I think it might have been like 196. Actually, I think Alex is cleared at around 216 and Shun's around 202. And we had no idea like whether these things were going to come in close together or far apart, right? But what we kind of took away from that was, there were 3 quite different characters, all looking at this shoe in quite a different way. And each of their designs resonated with probably quite different groups of people out there. And the difference, the variety in those designs, there was some take on the campus that was relevant for an audience out there. So we were pretty happy with that. And 10,000 bids, like remember these guys are making firm credit card commitments at that point. I remember you talking about that when we were doing the panel there, like, if I'm going to bid $1 million on this thing, that's a firm commitment, right? I'm actually kind of deciding that I'm willing to pay that up front. It's not a vote where it's not a like, it's like a firm commitment to buy.
Right.
So we were pretty happy with that. And remember that, what is the retail of a inline campus?
Like 90
$90?
Yeah.
Right.
Depending on the market.
So we're talking, more than twice the value of your run-of-the-mill campus, and even some of the more sort of pinnacle expressions of that shoe would probably be around the,
100, 110, 120 max.
Right.
Yeah.
So, when you look at these shoes clearing for around the $200 mark, then we see that as a pretty clear indicator of what the appetite for these particular takes on it were.
Yeah. Jose, from when you were talking to the creatives, how did you get a sense of how they were reacting to people bidding directly on their designs?
They were obviously excited, right? It was the moment where we went from imagination of what this would turn into to them leaving for the few hours that we overlapped in the same location and witnessing the bids coming and who was ahead. There was that cool, friendly, I'm getting more bids than you. Oh my God, you're getting amazing amount of bids, good for you. And so it was cool to see that happening live for those hours, and obviously a back and forth that continued over the next 72 hours.
Right.
like Tareq just said, it was really interesting to see the parity for the appetite between the three shoes. There was not one shoe taking off and leaving the other two behind in a large number separation. So the balance and the desire for the shoes as a whole and the story having equally captured the interest around the three designers' shoes, I think it was an amazing thing to see, because for me, the way I choose to read this is that regardless of three amazing shoes that came out of this thing, there was a story that keeps the three shoes together, that was distributing evenly the interest in having these shoes. And I know of people that were bidding for the pack. And so this notion that all of a sudden you're not selling just one designer over the other, but you're telling a story of three people that for over a certain amount of time embarked in this journey together, it almost turned into this being a pack that we were not planning to be taken as a pack, right? And that was a really interesting thing to say, to see happening throughout the days and even posts.
Yeah. Tareq and Yohan, from the StockX side, were there any like bot issues or people trying to hack the site, or was it all pretty technically smooth from their side?
Yeah, we didn't really have any issues with any of that at all. When it came down to bots, like I think what you can tell from the bid count as well, and like each bid is from a recorded account. So it wasn't an issue for this IPO.
And also, like, the mechanics of this IPO is that having a bot and putting multiple orders doesn't increase your chance. Either way, there's one clearing price and whoever goes on top of that. So I think also that discourages the traditional method of just having all the votes on a specific set retail price. And also for the people that are bidding it, the IPO process is more of an equitable way of assigning value that's more realistic to market conditions. So that means there's less upside potentially for the retail price versus resale price. This in essence should be in long term equal to each other. So I think that combination with this bidding mechanism where you're allowed to make one bid per that, it's just not worth the trouble.
Has that happened yet, where recipients of the shoes have now put it back on StockX for resale?
Oh, yeah.
It has happened, yeah. It has happened. So you can see, I mean, anybody listening and you, Jeff, too, can always go on StockX and you'll see exactly what's going on. You can track like the transaction volume and what the shoes have been selling for. And I just had a quick look before we got on the phone here, and you can see that actually these shoes in the days since the IPO, they've been holding their value pretty well. Sometimes you'll see things pretty much straight after they launch, they'll start selling below retail, and some will be selling above retail. And you see some pretty interesting transactions here, like Alex's shoe, like a few pairs have been selling up there above $500 in the after market.
It's incredible.
Shun's maybe not so many, but a couple of people have been willing to part with more than $1,000 for certain sizes of his shoe as well. And the same is true of Helen. $300-$400 as well in the resale market. But I think as Yohan's saying, the IPO mechanic itself means that it changes the baseline for what you're speculating on. If your plan is to buy these shoes to flip them, it's a very different baseline, because now you've got other people involved in setting the original price. So in the end, and I think Josh has talked about this as well, around actually bringing the mechanics from the resale market with the primary market have an interesting effect, which I think we're observing here, which is actually when people pay what they think is fair for something, then actually it removes room for some exploitation, perhaps of buying low and selling high.
Exactly.
That wasn't the reason that we came into this as such, but I think you can see that effect at play.
Okay, so overall, do you think we're going to see more of these IPO releases from Adidas?
I think it's a good question. We don't have anything planned at the moment to do more of these things in the pipeline, but we took this as a learning experience, and I think we're still figuring out how the IPO is played out here. This is a really small volume collector's item, and I think we need to think about the launch mechanics in a bigger picture, right? Because we don't always launch things like this. I would say it's not impossible. It's certainly possible, but we want to think about how this kind of fits in the bigger picture of what we're trying to do overall with MakerLab as a creation platform.
Yeah.
And of course, these kind of launch mechanics can be deployed whether you've done a MakerLab creation or not as well. So there's a little bit more to think about.
Yeah.
Especially when you look at I think the IPO mechanic works when there's a highly limited quantity, and the variable is the price. When you increase that net quantity, I don't think the IPO mechanic has the same level of impact that it would. So if you have 10,000 pairs available versus 333 for each one, I think the mechanic is very different, and finding a suitable price for that. I still imagine it can work. It's just that, for us, it was just a way to experiment with finding the most equitable way to bring a valuation to a product to market.
Right.
And that was the key learning that we had.
And it'd be interesting if you mentioned 10,000, but it'd be interesting if the consumer didn't know how many pairs there were. That would also be another interesting piece to the puzzle.
Right. But I don't think that would be a true IPO in that sense, because I think in order to fairly evaluate and assess the value of something, you have to know what the supply is.
Right.
And I think, it's like any currency or any precious metal or whatever it is. If you don't know the true, if we're not transparent with how many is actually being produced, then I think people will not be able to fairly and accurately evaluate the product.
Right. That's true.
I think it might be fair to say, Jeff, that when we think about the different mechanics you can use to launch something, we definitely don't have all our eggs in one basket on this one, right? So the IPO was something we definitely wanted to try. So fixed supply, open price, and maybe there are a couple of other things that we want to try as well, And you don't have to look that far. I mean, think about things like Kickstarter years ago have already been thinking about threshold funding to bring something out. So it kind of gives you an idea of different mechanics that have been tried out there for democratizing the way that product gets brought to market. So we're constantly thinking of new ways to bring things out, because the way that you get a product is part of the meaning that we attach to it. Always has been, always will be. So we definitely want to just keep innovating there.
Yeah. Jose, how about from the creative standpoint of MakerLab in general? How do you see future ones? Are there future ones planned? And also, what did you learn from this first one that you could take away to maybe try to improve it on the next round, if there is a next round?
One of the best things about this one is to see a very early ambition since first activations of MakerLab in regards to take to market something coming out of an experience like that. Check, we've done it in a really cool way, surrounded by an amazing story, an amazing experience, properly documented. That's a great validation of what we believed since pretty much first activation of MakerLab, that whatever comes out of these experiences has its value, and we should try to take it to market and make it accessible. Whether MakerLab is going to continue or not, whether is the next iteration in the works already or not, I'm not going to unveil that. But certainly there's validation here that whatever it is that we will do next, we will make sure that we carry over the best practices of this one, right? So.
Word. Okay, great. Well, thanks, guys. This was awesome to hear your post thoughts on everything. We're going to keep our ears tuned and our eyes on peeled for the next iteration of how this might looks like. You want any parting thoughts? Any parting words?
I mean, for me, I was like, I was quite inspired by, for those who's listening to this podcast and haven't been able to watch the documentary, it's on YouTube for free. So just search Adidas Campus 80s MakerLab documentary. But just the comments, because usually when you go to YouTube comments, it's not the bastion of humanity, that
Yes.
you see in those comments, but like how supportive these comments are. And like, I didn't find a single negative comment, which is like a unicorn, So it's like the people's reactions to this one was like really, really inspiring. I think people really liked the way it was brought to market. I think maybe the shoes models, it's obviously polarizing. People like models, people don't like models, but like I think the way it was brought to market and the way I think there's definitely positive response to this. Like one quote I'll read is like, it says, "Okay, Adidas killed this. I love that each designer brought something completely different to the process. Seeing how each of their minds work when approaching a project like this was crazy interesting. Also so dope that they got real people who actually live and breathe shoes involved in something like this. You really got an in-depth insider look at all that goes into making a shoe." So I think I think just having that positive sentiment is for us fuel that helps us to keep on pushing with these type of passion projects.
Yeah. Awesome.
Can we cheekily ask you a question, Jeff?
Oh yeah, for sure.
All right. Well, you were there, right? You saw the sneakers, you saw the IPO, you heard from the creators, you've seen the documentary too. What's your take on what went down? You see a lot of stuff, what's going on in this industry, so.
Yeah. I think it was revolutionary would be the word that I would use, like just all the different things that occurred with this, from the design process to the transparency to the release of it to the event. It was all just a lot, and a lot of good. I was telling some of you guys backstage that like this was almost like so many good things wrapped into one project that even if you isolated any one aspect of these things, it would have been like an incredible project already. But the fact that it all happened within this one singular project was just incredible. So I couldn't poke holes and say like, oh, maybe you should have done this, maybe you should have added that. But no, it was all good all throughout.
Yeah, that's the beauty of a platform like MakerLab, right? It's this ability to explore in multiple areas all at once. Even if the shoes that you're executing and witnessing the execution are the thread, but from the way we chose to capture the components from the brand, outside the brand, documenting this, telling this story, it was a pretty unique, amazing experience.
Yeah, definitely. All right. Well, thank you guys. Thanks for your time.
Thanks,
guys.
Thanks, Jeff.
Thanks for being with us.
I'll talk to you soon. See you around.
Cool.
See ya.
Take it
Bye.
easy. Bye-bye.